This is for the Maroons in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica. This is for all my Native American Moors of Turtle Island just minding their business in Canada until all this colonization bullshit.
Ronnie!
My bad, Auntie.
Chill, this is phenomenal.
Now, this conversation of reparations has been happening very heavily the last few years. So it's not going past the celebrities that are being influenced to talk very certain ways. Why do you think that hip-hop, why do you think that people in our culture in the mainstream run away from this conversation knowing it's something that's owed to us?
We've always, like Jackie Robinson, during the days of Malcolm X and those, he would actually speak against the movement for us to get justice in some respects, okay? It's not new. Some of our people, it's almost like that thing where a lot of celebrities become big just with their black support alone. But then when they go mainstream, they start feeling like, okay, I want to have crossover appeal. I want to reach out to whites. I want to reach out to Asians. So the first thing they do is try to throw us under the bus. I hate to say it, but I even feel Tyler Perry does that sometimes. You became a multi-millionaire off your black support alone. And yet, when that thing happened with Kyrie Irving, where they accused him of being anti-Semitic because he posted a link to a movie video, Tyler Perry jumps up there talking about somehow he's been friends with white Jews, all his like so unnecessary. Right. It's always that thing where we feel we have to throw our own people under the bus in order to curry favor with other people. I want favor with other people, but I'm not going to do it if I have to throw my people under the bus. I don't have to rock with everyone. I don't even rock with a lot of my own people. I think, like you said, though, it is a serious, one of it is a lack of values, but another issue is a lack of education. Yeah. But I will say that's starting to change. Cat Williams was doing a show, and he was like, hey, it's time to pay Black people reparations. Now, some of his talking points were a little off. Reparations is not to stop racism. Racism is going to still continue even after reparations long paid. Reparations is just about a debt that this nation owes to the Black descendants of those 4.5 million people who were emancipated and were supposed to be repaired during Reconstruction. But instead of that happening, the federal government terrorized them for another 100 years, depriving them of the little bit of wealth they were able to accumulate and locking them out of wealth that was generated by programs that they freely did for white Americans and other groups, from the Homestead Act to the GI Bill, the Social Security Act. So I do think there's a lack of education, and I also do feel that there is the desire for people to want to be accepted by others. And what is the quickest way to be shunned by other groups, even sometimes our own, is to speak up specifically and unapologetically for us. I see it all the time.
Yeah, powerful. Now, as far as you talk about the Freemen, but how will we, because they always say, well, the records was destroyed, we don't really have, proof that, how will we find out if we were like descendants of slaves? What system would be in place for you, whoever was in charge, to find out who's actual descendants that should actually get the reparations?
Well, when people say it, that's BS. But following the footsteps of California, they do have a part that will have genealogy services to help people trace their lineage. But here's the truth. Most freemen, we know our lineage. We know our history. I might be a special case. When I was born, my great-grandparents were still living. They died when I was like 9 to 11, but they were still living. Those people were born in the 1880s, and they were still alive when I was born. My father was raised by his great-grandparents, Mr. Powell and Miss Irene. Mr. Powell was born in the late 1890s. Miss Irene was born in 1900. They died in the 1970s and the 1980s, respectively. My great-grandmother, my dear Nan, I did a commercial about her. She was born in 1914. She was raised by her grandparents. Her grandfather, Willie Simmons, who was enslaved right here in Beaufort, South Carolina. Wow. A lot of Black Americans have similar stories. Just a few generations ago, a lot of our grandparents and great-grandparents literally were growing up around the majority of people who were formerly enslaved. But you have census records. You have records for the Freedmen's Bureau. Okay, you have land deeds, you have pensions. There are plenty of ways to track our ancestors who are formerly enslaved. But I don't want to discount those who say they have had a hard time. For those people, we will have genealogy services. And no matter who, If a person comes up and claim that they are a freeman, a black descendant of those who were emancipated by the U.S., we are going to have to vet their paperwork. Everyone's going to get vetted because we already see you have like Rachel Dolezal and people like that, but we even have a lot of black immigrants. Reparations cannot be done based on race. If we do it based on race, it won't happen at all. It will be struck down as unconstitutional. It has the precedent for reparation is based on status. So this is not anti-immigrant. If people want to take it that way, tough. But even a black person that shows up and says that, hey, I'm a freeman, we're going to have to vet them. Because just because you have a black face, you might be my color, but I don't mean you're my kind. And in the case of reparations, it has to be for my kind. You have to be of that status freeman. So we're going to have genealogy services, but everyone's claim is going to be vetted to make sure that we are upholding the qualification of you having that status of American freedman.
Now, another conversation that comes up in pop culture and likes to kind of go against us receiving reparations is, all right, you Negroes ain't going to do nothing but reparations, but buy gold Cuban link chains and cars and blase, blah. You're not going to do nothing but waste it anyway. And it's really nobody's business how it's spent, but that's the conversation that's had when brought up with reparations, particularly with our people. In a perfect world, how would you like to see reparations used in our culture if received?
Well, first, may I address that?
Yes, sir.
Even if we do waste the money, it's our money. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
This is not a shot at white Americans, but look at these corporations that show up every damn year and asking the federal government to give them trillions of dollars to bail them out. Most of those corporations are ran by privileged, rich white men and white women. No one ever gets to know about what are you doing with these billions of dollars the government is giving you. The airlines are back in front of Congress asking for more money. And the federal government is literally saying to them, what did you do with all this money we gave you? The Pentagon has failed its 6th audit. They cannot account for $90 to $21 trillion. No one is saying to them, we should not give you more money. You have rich white people who are leaving billions, millions, and billions of dollars to their pet poodle. No one criticizes them. But if you look at history, Black Americans have been the most frugal. Right now, as we speak, all studies show that Black Americans save more than any other group, even though we have the least amount of wealth. When Trump did the stimulus checks, this is a study, you can look it up. Black Americans started more new businesses than any other group. That is verified, okay? Show me another group that came to America or that built America, which is just us, but show me another group in America that was being terrorized day in and day out, had no protection, but we built not just one Black Wall Street, but over 50 of them by some counts. That shows that we are and continue to be the most frugal with our money. But even if we were not, I get my paycheck. No one can tell me how to spend it. It's my right to do it. Yes. However, I would like to see us use our reparations to get ownership, to start our own industries. The truth of the matter is there are some industries that would not be in existence without us, okay? Mm-hmm. And we need to have ownership in those industries, and we need to do that by starting our own enterprises. I would like to see us go back to buying land. We rent far too much. That's an American issue, but with Black Americans, we are overrepresented in those who are renting. And it's pushing us into a system of sharecropping where we're selling grandmother's house, or we're being forced to sell it, or we feel like we have no option to sell but grandmother's house, and then we're renting. The problem with renting is that the people who are over you, your landlord, they tell you this is what you're going to pay. It's going to go up next year, and more of your hard-earned money is going to them. Just like with sharecropping. We did the work, but most of what we harvested, what we cultivated, what we harvested went to the landowner. I want us to go back to having land ownership. I want us, this is what my Freedmen's Bureau is going to do. It's going to have Freedmen banks, Freedmen schools, Freedmen hospitals, Freedmen post offices. But I would like to see us bring our Black Wall Streets back as well. Those things happen organically. I want to see those return also. And in being for Black American freedom doesn't mean we're excluding others, but it means we're going to be first and foremost for ourselves, which every other group does.
Yes, sir.
How do you feel about like the fact that we really can't, in certain instances, come together for anything? Like you see, like you talked about Kyrie, even Kanye West. He said he after Jewish B, but the ADL is coming after, everybody's coming after him. But when it comes to Black people, we don't really have we can't stick together like that. Why do you think that is in America for any little thing? We really can't, come together and form that fist, to come together.
Well, I think we do stick together pretty well, because if we have not, we would not be here. The truth of the matter is we would have been annihilated a long time ago. Freedmen, Black Americans, not talking about Black immigrants. We're really non-tribalistic, and that's actually our weakness. We are so welcoming of others. So that kind of answers your question. One of the reasons that we don't come together on a larger scale, I will make the argument that's the issue. We come together, but we don't get that groundswell, that mass we need, is because we welcome too many others in our midst. We even like to welcome people who hate us. You look at someone who slaughters a bunch of Black Americans, the next day, while the bodies of their loved ones are still warm, we up there saying we forgive them. We welcome too many people in our midst who hate us, even people who look like us. We've always had to deal with the coons, always. But now we have the tethers, the Black immigrants who are against us, and we're welcoming them in our midst because they're Black. Now that's starting to change some. So one of the reasons that we don't come together on a larger scale is because we allow infiltrators in our midst. But that is done strategically. There is no other group that has been targeted in that way besides us. These groups, the NAASP, the National Action Network, the Urban League, instead of them speaking for us, which they're supposed to do, they go out their way to speak for everyone else. They pretty much make themselves a people of color group instead of making themselves a Black, and first and foremost, a Black American, aka freedmen group. So these other groups, like the Anti-Defamation League, they stand on being first and foremost for Jewish people, really white Jewish people. Because if they really gave a damn about Jewish people, they would say something about the way Israel treats Black Jews, Jews from Uganda, Sudan, and Ethiopia. They say nothing about that, or they say little in comparison to what they say about anti-Semitism when they feel it is directed towards white Jews. Those groups stand on and unapologetically advocate for the group that is their focus. We have these groups that do not do that. So that's why I go back to what I'm saying. We have to become the candidates we deserve. We have to become the politicians we deserve. And we have to form the groups that are going to speak for us and speak out against those who are against us that we deserve as well. Because we can't rely on them because they're not going to do it.
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about a couple current events, if you may. I don't know if you follow what goes on in the media and hip hop like that. You think about what's going on with Diddy right now, and the reason I'm asking you is because you brought up Bill Cosby's publicist on here, Andrew Wyatt, and he pretty much predicted it before it happened. He talked about this being a systematic attack against wealthy Black men. How do you feel about that? Bill Cosby's, Diddy's, and people like that, if you may.
I feel that, one, I don't know all the details. I do find it crazy that when a person is just accused of doing something wrong, they're automatically treated like they're guilty. Yep. Right. I've always found that problematic. I've always felt that if there's an accusation made, they should be investigated. But a person should still have the presumption of innocence till something is proved. And while I can't say if Puff Daddy or P. Diddy now has done what he's accused of doing or not, I will say, of course, I feel there's always a target on the backs of Black people, but especially Black men. Whenever they feel we're getting too powerful or they feel we may be a threat to the system, I feel they're always going to try to dig up something on you or make something up. I am not powerful necessarily. I feel like I have a voice and I'm using it to help get the message out there for freemen, my people first and foremost, which is going to help all people. But I've always tell people, don't be surprised if they try to dig something up on me. Now, I don't like Eric Adams in New York City. I can't stand him. I really despise him. I really do. But he spoke against the slow Joe Crow Biden administration because he's like, y'all letting all these illegal immigrants in. What are you doing? Stop this. Look at how quickly things change for him. They're now accusing him of impropriety with finances. And now this sexual assault allegation against him from the early 90s has resurfaced. I'm not saying he's not guilty. What I'm saying is kind of ironic whenever you speak out against the system. And he was somebody who spoke out against us. When the Black man was choked to death by two men, the white guy did the choking, but it was some other Black guy in there who did the holding of him down, Black immigrant guy. when that happened, he tried to blame the black man that was being choked. Okay, so he was speaking on their language.
Yeah.
He criticized the one time these allegations occurred. I'm not saying that's happening with P. Diddy or anyone, but I do feel that definitely does happen. That definitely happened. Remember, they was trying to frame Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., okay? Trying to frame him several times. I'm not saying any of those men are trying to do what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were trying to do, but I do know in the case with Bill Cosby, he was very much about how we were represented in the media. He was trying to, from what I heard, get ownership of one of the channels, and he was planning on having representation of us that would be positive. I know that on one of his shows, I saw a few reruns of it. It was before I was born, I think. He will, at the end, always talk about black historical figures, such as inventors and things like that. We know they don't want that. Look at the music industry. Speaking of Kanye West, he said that he had sex with a Jewish woman or whatever. They're coming after him, guns a-blazing. But some of those same white Jewish execs will have no issues signing an artist who says degrading, disgusting things about black women. So there's definitely a there.